And thanks for being with us here on Morning Live. The Department of Small Business Development say that they refute allegations that were made by the Democratic Alliance that they are failing to distribute COVID-19 debt relief to companies in need. Now, the DA alleged that the department had failed to allocate 92% of the emergency funds meant to give reprieve to small businesses and that only 8% was paid out. In its response to the Democratic Alliance yesterday, the department gave a breakdown of how the fund has been utilised, and we are joined now by the Director General in the Department of Small Business Development, Mkhumane, to talk to us a little bit more and provide us with more context to all of this. Mr. Mkhumane, thanks so much for your time and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning to the viewers.
So let's start at the beginning. The Democratic Alliance, of course, raising this issue in Parliament and citing the Auditor General's report for where that information was actually gleaned from. So, as per the department, how much was allocated to the department for relief for small businesses and how much has been spent to date?
Thank you, Sakina. Just to also emphasize one thing before I go to that. The report that is being referred to is a report that was released in August 2020. So it's not true that it's the report that is now being seen now for the first time. To answer your question, we were allocated 500 million as a department to assist with SMME debt relief. Out of that 513 million, we were able to distribute 316 million at the time, because what happened is the SMMEs that we were supporting them because they were operating under hard lockdown where they were unable to operate. So most of the SMEs that were approaching us were looking for funding just to sustain themselves, to be able to pay rent, to be able to pay salaries for their employees, to also be able to pay rates and taxes. So we were supporting SMMEs to be able to sustain themselves during that particular period. So the way we were distributing this money, we're giving them in tranches. We'll give them, someone will apply for 300,000, for example. We'll give them 100,000 for that particular month, and then they will come back to us and provide us with evidence that they spent money correctly, and then we'll give them a next tranche. So some of them did not come back because we received over 24,000 applications at the time. We were able to approve only 1,497 because we only had 513 million. We could not approve more than that because that's the money we allocated at the time. So in the money that was allocated, we were able to spend 62% of that funding on the relief to support SMEs to sustain themselves during that particular period.
So do you know where this notion of the 1.4 billion rand comes from?
The 1.4 billion, they are talking about the overall budget that was there to support SMEs. They are talking about the money that is also going to the Township and Rural Entrepreneurship Program, which is supporting spaza shops, supporting people who are dealing with hair care, people who are dealing with clothing and textile. So they are just talking about the overall budget. They are not talking about the budget that was set aside as a debt relief. The money that they are talking about is supposed to be the money that is accounted for at the end of the financial year, which is the 1st of March 2021.
So just going back to the figures you gave us, you say you've managed to disburse about 62% of the budget that you had. Why only 62%? I see in terms of some of the weakness identified through the Auditor General's report, the one that the DA is mentioning, it says that they identified a control weakness in the approval process. So what was that weakness and have you since rectified it?
Okay, the only control weakness that they spoke about was specifically on the spaza shop support program. The way we are administering it, we are doing it in partnership with the banks. Remember, during the especially level 5 and level 4, we are unable to move as a department, even our enterprises or our small enterprise development entities, were unable to move. So we were working closely with the Standard Bank as well as Nedbank. So there was a challenge in terms of the approval process because as a department, we have to approve. Also, the banks on their side, they also have their own requirements that they look at before they can provide money. We distribute money through the banks, if I may put it that way. So there was the issue of the integration of processes between what the department has control over and what the banks have control over. So it was an issue of how do we manage the process between ourselves and the banks to make sure that we close all the loops, because you'll find that, for example, in a spaza shop, a person who is married to someone else, the husband will come and apply for funding, and the wife will also come and apply for funding. So that's the weakness that was mentioned by the Auditor General, which we were able to close quickly because we were centralizing everything and making sure that we were able to put controls in place between ourselves and the banks that we're working with.
Mr. Mkhumane, so overall, how many small businesses do we have in the country, and how many are actually on your database as the department?
We have in the country, in terms of the statistics that we have, remember we don't have a central database. We are working on the database which we established from the 1st of April 2020, and we're encouraging small businesses to register on the database so that we can have one database. Because if you look at different research, UNISA will come up with a different figure because we are just estimating. The estimates that we have 3.5 million small businesses in the country. Currently, we have just less than 200,000 who are registered on the SMMESA.gov.za database, which is the database that we want to utilize to have a feel of how many businesses we have in the country, in which sectors they are, what contribution they are making to the economy, because for now we rely on Statistics SA in terms of what the contribution of SMMEs are. But we know that the target is that we must have SMMEs contributing more than 50% to the GDP, which is the case in other countries. This is the target that we have in the MTSF, because we want to push and make sure that our SMEs are able to achieve what they want to achieve, what they are expected to achieve in terms of their contribution to the economy. We know that we are not there and we cannot do it alone. That's why we are working closely with the private sector so that they can also support small businesses to contribute and to reach their maximum performance.
So overall, since the start of this process for relief from COVID-19 affiliated or associated problems, how many applications have you processed as a department, and how many have you actually approved, and how many have you rejected? How many are outstanding?
Okay, all in all, SIFA, because we're operating through our Small Enterprise Finance Agency, we received over 35,865 applications for SME debt relief, of which 14,451 were fully completed applications, which is equal to 40% of those applications. Remember, we also have requirements. When we support SMEs as government, we need to make sure that we have SMEs that are contributing to tax, SMEs that are registered properly, they are compliant with SARS. So we have to check those things. So the 21,414 applications that were incomplete at the time, they were referred to Small Enterprise Development Agency so that they can assist them to complete the applications. Then out of the 14,451, we were able to approve 1,497 because we only had a budget of 513 million. We could not approve more than what we had at the time. So we were able to then spend 316 million of the budget that was allocated. But what we said is that we are not going to just forget about those people who applied to us. Some of them, for example, we linked them to UIF because some were just looking for money to pay their employees during the lockdown period. So we refer them to UIF so that they can assist them to process, to pay their employees. But we also looked at what can we do post the hard lockdown period. Because remember, if you read the Auditor General's report, it also tells that this scheme was only meant to last between April and September 2020, because it was for that particular period, just to make sure that SMEs do not go under.
So how much is still left in your coffers at this stage, Mr. Mkhumane?
Okay, out of the 513, because we're able to distribute 316, so we are left with just over 200 million, less than 200 million, and that money is being utilized now to support SMMEs with what we call business viability, because SMMEs, remember at the time when we were supporting them, they were not operating. Now they are operating. So they came back to us and said, we are not looking for money now to just sustain ourselves. We need money to assist us to adjust our operating processes. For example, if they need technology now, because most of the work is being done online, we'll have to assist them with that. So we came up with what we call business viability scheme. That money is going to that particular intervention now to assist our SMEs to adjust to new ways of working. So we're assisting them to adjust their business processes, to introduce new technologies. That money will be spent by the end of this financial year, which is March 31st of March 2021.
So what does that mean for those applicants who were unsuccessful for one reason or another, who actually did approach the department, but as for the reasons that you have outlined for us, you were not able to actually disburse funds to them? Does this then mean that for them, they have no prospect of receiving any funding or the funds that they actually applied for from the department?
Yes, like I indicated, the money was only meant to last for that particular period. The people who are applying for support from the department, we encourage them to register on the smmesa.gov.za. There are quite a number of other instruments that are there. So this instrument, because it was for that particular period to assist them with working capital, was closed in September, end of September, and we did provide a closeout report to Parliament to that effect. So it's something that we have done, but SMMEs are still able to apply for funding for any other thing. For example, some SMMEs right now are applying for manufacturing. We are supporting them because...
I get that, Mr. Mkhumane, but I guess the question I'm asking is slightly different. If you to use the SASSA example or the TERS example for as one to perhaps bring a bit more clarity. So someone applies for TERS relief from, say, May, June, July, and then they don't get the funds. And as you said, you closed in September because it was only for that period. But people would have already submitted their applications prior to that deadline. And for some other reasons, there were problems identified with the application. Are you saying that that is now a closed book? It doesn't matter what was wrong with that application. We have moved beyond that point, so people need to forget about that.
Yes, because like I indicated earlier, that you are right, the money was for that particular period where we're assisting them just to sustain themselves. We are saying we've gone back to some of them that have applied, the 14,000 applicants that were not that successful at the time, because we want to integrate them into the business viability scheme, which now assists them with the way forward. It's not about just assisting them to sustain themselves, to pay rent or to pay electricity and their employees. So they are still eligible to apply for the business viability, but we are handling that process as a department, consulting all of them so that they can know that there is this opportunity to apply for the business viability scheme.
So what is the approval criteria for that scheme?
Yeah, it should be a business that is operating. You should be able to show us that you've been operating and you were affected by COVID, and you have to be clear in terms of exactly what kind of interventions you need, because like I indicated earlier, some they will need just assistance with technology, their business processes they need to change, might be others they need to introduce a particular equipment to assist them to adjust to the new ways of working. So it's the intervention that is very clear. It's for those who want to improve their productivity, they want to adjust their business processes, but we have the information on our database, which is smmesa.gov.za. But it must be a South African business registered in South Africa. You must also be compliant with SARS. You also have to register with UIF, because one of the key issues that we identified through this hard lockdown is that most of our small businesses, they are not registering their employees with UIF. And I think there's this perception that UIF is expensive, which is not really true, because you can pay as little as 10 Rand for your employees in terms of UIF. And that assists us a lot when we have these hard times where businesses are unable to operate, you are able to get money from UIF instead of us having to get more money from Treasury to support SMEs just to sustain themselves.
And now, Mr. Mkhumane, as I'm listening to you speak, I'm just envisioning a situation whereby someone who might have been successful in the first relief application process also again applying to you now for this new round of disbursement. How is that going to work? If you were assisted the first time around, do you qualify to apply again? And could you be successful again, while there may be businesses who were perhaps not compliant in the first round and they may lose out again?
Yes, you are eligible. We cannot stop you from applying, especially for those that we assisted to rescue them during the hard lockdown, because it's in our interest that these SMMEs are sustainable, because they assist us in terms of us addressing the issue of jobs in the country. We know that we are struggling with the jobs. So it's an issue of us doing what we can do with the resources that we have. We have been discussing with the National Treasury, because you know that there is that huge scheme, National Credit Guarantee Scheme, where SMEs are complaining that they are unable to access. We've been trying to push for them to also consider us or make some sort of allocation through our small enterprise finance agents, because we have what we call Cooler Credit Guarantee Scheme, which is managed by the Reserve Bank, where most of our SMEs are able to benefit from the National Credit Guarantee Scheme. So we are still waiting for a response from National Treasury, because we believe that the money that we have is too little to address the needs of the SMMEs. We are still engaging with them. A proposal has been submitted to Treasury. It's up to them to give us a go-ahead, because we know that the need is much, much greater than what we've been allocated as a department.
And just in closing, Mr. Mkhumane, the Public Protector's report, the one rather the Auditor General's report that was released in August, also mentions that 1,697 spaza shop owners had received grants, and in total there are about 5.9 million spaza shops in the country. So looking at that, are you able to give us a sectoral breakdown of the industry, of the sectors rather, in which those payments were made, the disbursements?
Sorry, on the spaza shops in particular?
No, I'm just citing that as an example of what the Auditor General's report highlighted. Out of about 5.9 million, you had 1,600 approved. So in terms of the sectors of small businesses, are you able to give us a breakdown as to where the disbursements were made?
Yes. The agricultural sector, we were able to support 24 SMMEs, and we distributed 6 million to those SMMEs. Under the construction sector, we supported 146 SMMEs. Under electricity, gas and water supply, we had 11. Under financial services, we had 88. We distributed 22 million. Under the manufacturing sector, we had 140, and we distributed over 38 million. Mining and quarrying, we had 12 SMMEs, we distributed over 8 million. Under transport, storage and communication, we had 55 SMMEs, we distributed over 15 million. And then under wholesale, retail, trade, repair of motor vehicles, household goods, hotels and restaurants, we had 248 SMMEs where we distributed over 66 million at the time.
Well, Mr. Mkhumane, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time, Director General in the Department of Small Business Development, just speaking to us about some of the developments around, and also giving us clarity on how SMMEs were supported, the debt relief funds that had been allocated to his department, and how it has been spent so far. And do let us know at Morning Live SABC. Your views, as always, welcome. And of course, we're going to take a quick break.